welcome to another episode of The Only Playbook. Episode 56, Fantasy Football Talks have officially started to resume. I know it's early, but it's never too early to plan for the fantasy football season. We are going to go over each of our top 10 quarterback lists heading into 2022. I'm Sweetcar, Shashot Shovit. How's it going, guys?
Going good. Finally, we get to talk about the game within the game, which is what I've been waiting for this whole offseason, and it's finally here. Can't wait.
Yeah, time to get rid of all the GM talk and get straight to the player talks.
The inception within the game, right? I feel like an inception here. Game with the football within the football is the name of the game. Again, appreciate you guys so much for joining us. All the support so far. If you're listening to one of us, to us on one of those podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google. And if you're watching on YouTube, follow all of us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at The Only Playbook. Thank you guys again for all of the support. Shashot, I'm going to let you kick us off with recent news around the league. Go ahead, man.
All right, we haven't done one of these in a good amount of time. Here's some important stuff that you may want to keep track of before you make your final decisions on your own list of players you want to draft, players you don't want to draft. Here's some updates. So Chris Godwin, he did get hurt last year, and the news from the team has been coming out saying that there is no timetable for Godwin. So that's a little scary. We would expect him to be recovered by now, but there's no timetable. So it's iffy. So if you have to compare him to like another player of his caliber, you may want to look into the other player above him on your rankings for now. Another update is Colts signed Philip Lindsay. That might be the most useless thing I say all day, but that's good to know. Just because, Matt Ryan's always had multiple running backs. It's very rarely that just one guy does everything all the time. So we could see some Philip Lindsay usage, only because the historic season Jonathan Taylor had, it's really hard to replicate that exact same thing. So there may be a slight decline, and Philip Lindsay may be a significant part of that. Number 3, Tariq Cohen. He just recovered from his ACL tear, and now he has a lower leg injury. I think it was maybe an Achilles. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it's significant. And it happened on Instagram Live while he was showing off some workouts for the people. So thanks for being a man of the people, but we may never see him in the football field at this rate if he just keeps getting hurt. 2 more, James Bradbury, who is one of the top 5, if you want to argue that, cornerbacks in the league. He just signed with the Eagles, 1 year, $10 million. So the Eagles out there are just ramping up everything that they were bad at and looking pretty impressive. And last on my list is Paris Campbell. You might be like, whoa, I haven't heard that name in so long, but you should probably take note. He was a pretty good player. He was a stud in many aspects of the game in the little time that he did play. He was an up-and-coming star, got hurt, and now he's 100% as per his Twitter. And Matt Ryan's got more weapons, not just in the running back area, but on the wide receiver side of the game too now.
Awesome. I feel bad for Tariq Cohen, man. That guy is exciting.
Yeah, I know.
There's also one other news that I recently came across is DeAndre Hopkins being suspended for 6 games due to substance abuse. So, some
recently
PEDs.
that came out probably like 2-3 weeks ago, didn't it? Or
Oh, did it really? I was looking up Kyler Murray's fantasy outlook, and I realized that DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be there for the first 6 games. So also a huge hit for the Cardinals.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got some weapons. They decided to draft another tight end, so no Hopkins means three tight end sets for them, I guess, maybe. But we'll jump into the fantasy outlooks based on the teams. But let's get right into it, guys. I'm going to start us off. I'm going to give you guys my top 10 rankings heading into 2022. These are going to be based on, it's going to be very, very different. Slightly different if you're doing like half point PPR, full point PPR, or standard. I'm ranking these based on our league, which is half point PPR. But regardless. So my top 10 rankings, quarterback, starting from number 10, I have Tom Brady. Tom Brady is going to be the number 10 ranked fantasy quarterback. Until he proves that he can't do it, I can't doubt him. The times we've doubted him, he's had a resurgence. So, it's tough for me to kick him outside of my top 10. There are a couple of guys that won't make the top 10 because of him. But again, he's still got a decent number 3 receiver in Russell Gage. Godwin news is a little bit worrisome, but we still got 3-4 months till the season kicks off. So I got Brady number 10. They have the 26th ranked strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks. So something to keep track of, but he is my number 10 quarterback. Number 9, Aaron Rodgers, strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks, 21st. Aaron Rodgers, again, I know he lost Davante Adams, but he's proven time and time again that that's not going to matter. And if he taps into the potential that Christian Watson has just based on his athleticism and intangibles, again, I don't think he'll miss DeAndre Hopkins all that much. Number 8, I got Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has the 31st ranked strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks. So really, really tough in his division. He is coming off an injury. He's coming off not having his number 1 receiver now, who isn't really a number 1 receiver, but still it's a weapon that he no longer has. There's a ton of expectations that Rashad Bateman's going to have to take the next step, but he is pretty much still a rookie in my eyes. So unless they're going to be, Mark Andrews is going to get fed twice as many times. I still have concerns about Lamar Jackson. I know the upside's really, really high for him because of his rushing, but it seemed like there was a formula that teams had found last year with having that single high safety and pretty much just having everybody else at the line and forcing Lamar Jackson to throw. And I'm not saying that he can't progress from throwing, but his weapons got depleted. So his weapons are less than they were last year. So there is some concern there, in my opinion. Number 7, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott has the 5th easiest strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks. I'm not big on Dak, but I know Dak is a huge stats guy and stats correlate to fantasy points. So I think he's number 7. He lost Amari Cooper, but they did go ahead and kind of promote and extend Michael Gallup. So I think they see him as a formidable replacement. And I expect CeeDee Lamb to take the next step, probably, possibly a top 5 receiver. And we'll get to receiver rankings somewhere down the road. But I got Dak at number 7. Number 6, Russell Wilson has the 4th easiest schedule for opposing quarterbacks. He's getting put into an offense that's substantially better than what was happening in Seattle. I think his offensive line's a lot better. His running backs are younger, and he's got a really, really youthful receiving core outside of the whole Jerry Jeudy situation. I don't know how that's going to play out. But nonetheless, I think he has enough weapons and a really, really good defense that's going to put him in really, opportunistic situations where the touchdowns could increase. So I got Russell Wilson at number 6. Number 5, I have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert as the 15th hardest, easiest strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks. He's kind of the middle of the pack for me. I think he exceeded expectations last year. He was the number 2 ranked fantasy quarterback per ESPN. Naturally, I think there's going to be a slight regression just with defenses figuring things out, but I wouldn't put it past him to exceed these expectations. That's just where I see this falling, in my opinion. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. He has the 3rd easiest strength of schedule for opposing quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts finally got his true number 1 receiver. Their defense is shoring up. They got Big Play Slay and just signed James Bradbury. And I think they're going to tap more into Jalen Hurts as a rusher. And on top of that, you just have to assume next year he's slightly progressing as a passer. AJ Brown's going to help him big time by, being the 50-50 contested catch guy. So I think Jalen Hurts is going to be really, really good. Number 3, I got Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere. He has got the 24th hardest schedule for opposing quarterbacks, but the loss of Tyreek Hill, I don't really think it's going to matter. Getting Juju, getting MVS, they have enough weapons, and Patrick Mahomes is just really, really good that I don't think it's really going to matter. Number 2, Kyler Murray is number 2 on my list. I debated putting him number 1, but I think the DeAndre Hopkins news is what shied me away from making him number 1. I think Kyler Murray, if he stays healthy, has a possible MVP type season. I think, again, the weapons are aplenty. They saw 2 straight years now where Cliff Kingsbury down the stretch for these Arizona Cardinals has been really bad, and it's led to kind of the demise of the team in the second half of the season. I think Kyler takes the next step. He was hurt last year. I see him using his legs a little bit more, and I have him number 2 on my schedule or on my list. Number 1, it is really, really tough to not put him number 1. I'm going to go with Josh Allen. Josh Allen has the 16th hardest schedule in terms of quarterbacks versus opposing defenses, but they only got better. They got James Cook. Their receivers are all still there except for Cole Beasley, but I don't really think he's going to be missed tremendously. And I think, again, another year for Allen to get even better. I think the sky's still the limit for him. I don't think he's tapped into his potential. So for me, I have Josh Allen, who also loves to run the ball and take touchdowns away from his running back. So that's all going to be fantasy points for him. Josh Allen is my number 1 quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great list. I think that the only difference that I got from that was Dak Prescott, and some of the orders were the same, but we'll find out more about what the difference was. So number 10, I have Aaron Rodgers. I have him number 10. I think you had him number 9. I think that you're right. Losing Devontae Adams is huge. And although he's finished top 10 in since 2011, I think that regression and father time and the fact that Aaron Rodgers doesn't run the ball as much, which is crucial for fantasy points. It's gonna. I have him as top 10, but yeah, 10 because I just don't think he's gonna produce as much as he has. Tom Brady is number 9 for me. Last year he finished top 3. It's crazy from going from 3 to 9, but Chris Godwin, the question mark there, ACL tear, how long he's going to be out for. They do have Mike Evans. I just don't see the consistency. And again, same thing with Aaron Rodgers, kind of father time just kind of creeping in. But watch Tom Brady prove me wrong and get top 5 again this year, just because it's the GOAT that we're talking about. Number 7, I've got Lamar Jackson. So I think Lamar Jackson is due for a pretty big regression. To be honest, the bottom 3 guys right here, I'm like, I don't even know where they could be. Like Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, I feel like they could be in any position. But just some stats, after rushing for 80.4 yards in his MVP season, he only rushed for 63.9 yards per game in 2021, regression there. And although like when he's at his best, he's an elite quarterback. And when the accuracy isn't there, he could still run the ball, get you rushing touchdowns, get you rushing yards. So he's in my top 10 list because of the fact that he can run. But as far as a true quarterback, that, the question mark as far as accuracy goes is putting him lower than some of the other guys. Number 6, I have Russell Wilson.
Did you skip number 8 or did I miss that? Or are you numbering yours?
Oh, you're right. I'm probably numbering incorrectly. So 10 was Aaron Rodgers, 9 is Brady, 8 is Lamar.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. And then 7 is Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson last year finished as QB 13, despite all of the injuries that he faced. I think what was his pinky? He wasn't able to play because of his pinky injury. But he had plenty of options last year. He's got plenty of options this year with the new team, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and the tight end of the Denver Broncos, Albert Okwuegbunam. I should probably do that again. Okwuegbunam, that guy. I think he's in for a breakout year this year. If he doesn't get injured, this guy's easily a top 10 quarterback. It's Russell Wilson, for God's sakes. Like, just throw it deep to Sutton and Tim Patrick, and you'll be all right. And Jerry Jeudy just needs to catch his passes. Number 6, I have Kyler Murray. Oh, and Jerry Jeudy does need to stay out of jail too, which I think he probably will. Number 6, I have Kyler Murray. So I'm not that big on Kyler Murray because, one, I think he's a little, I just think he's just full of crap. I think he's soft. I think he is scared to run the ball. Yeah.
Who turned the heat up in the kitchen? Is this a Kyler Murray roast all of a sudden?
I think that when you try to ask money like you are, Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, but you haven't really proven yourself as one of the elite quarterbacks, then you do get shade. All right, Kyler Murray. And I feel like, he had a really good, last year. He was making passes that were such at a low level, but they during the end of the season, he wasn't able to do that consistently, without the receiving core that he has. When DeAndre Hopkins wasn't there, it wasn't AJ Green, it was Christian Kirk. No Christian Kirk. Is Hollywood Brown going to step in? I don't have faith in Kyler Murray. So, that's the reason why Kyler Murray is number 6. Oh, just some stats as well. When Hopkins was in the lineup, he averaged 18.8 fantasy points. When Hopkins is in the lineup, 24.9 fantasy points, right? So Hopkins not being there for the first 6 games, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. So that's why he's number 6. Number 5, I wish I could put this guy to number 1, honestly. Jalen Hurts. All right, Eagles and Jalen Hurts. I think this guy has the potential to be quarterback 1, be the best quarterback in fantasy this year. The Eagles ranked 2nd in screen passes last year, so expect some dump offs to AJ Brown, some yards for catch for AJ Brown, and they still have Devontae Smith. They have Dallas Goedert. And outside of throwing the ball, this guy runs. This guy runs a lot. I feel like he's a lot like Dak Prescott in consistency, because although he may not look flashy, he still gets the fantasy points that you need. 20 easily gets 20 points just through his rushing game. And like you said, they play in, I believe you mentioned this, they play an easy schedule. The hardest schedule in the first 6 games, I think, is the Dolphins. They play the Lions, Commanders, Jaguars, and Giants, among some other teams as well. So the schedule favors him, and I think that having AJ Brown is a huge upgrade. Number 4, I have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is a guy that is going to continue with the same core that he has. Nothing is changing. Just chemistry is going to be built with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and you still have Austin Eckler, right? So he averaged 23.8 points per game, fantasy points per game last year. They signed Gerald Everett, so tight end, which will be better than having Jared Cook. So same offense, same guy. It's just going to get better. Number 3, I've got Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has one of the easier games in the first 6 games as well. They play the Steelers, Cowboys, Jets, Dolphins, Ravens, and then Saints. Saints a little bit difficult, but I think that all those other teams allow enough fantasy points for you to be happy with having Joe Burrow as your QB1. The one thing to note about Joe Burrow, however, is that during the fantasy playoff weeks, they face Tampa and New England Patriots. Those are in the playoff rounds, right? So you've got to be careful about that. But the first 6 games, you got Jamar Chase. You're just going to build more chemistry there, and T. Higgins. I think, safe pick with Joe Burrow. And number 3. Number 2, I've got Patrick Mahomes. And why not, right? Come on, it's Patrick Mahomes. He did lose Tyreek Hill, but they added MVS, they added Juju, and they added in the 3rd round pick Sky Moore. They still have Kelsey, and they have Hardman, which they're doing they're doing a bunch of dump offs to Hardman, right? Where the Hardman comes around from the slot, and then they just pass it to him. A lot of those places for Hardman, because basically utilizing his speed. So I expect the Chiefs to pass the ball a lot, so the attempts will be there. And given that, just more opportunities for fantasy points for Patrick Mahomes. Because do we really have faith in CH? Do we really have faith in Ronald Jones? No, we don't. Right. Number 1 is going to be probably consensus number 1, Josh Allen, just because this guy has been top quarterback for the past 2 years, right? He faces an opening schedule with the Rams and the Dolphins the first 3 weeks, but after that, besides the Patriots, it's pretty much smooth sailing from there. So if you can get Josh Allen as your QB1, you're going to be pretty satisfied, barring any injuries and things like that. I mean, this guy can do it all. He's got the arm strength. He can run the ball. I mean, easy QB1 this year for me. And that's it.
All right.
Interesting. You had Joe Burrow as your 3rd quarterback. I don't even have him in my top 10. So I love the differences in the lineups or in the rankings.
Oh yeah, shit's about to get shaken up. If you guys are ready for it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with my list, and I have Joe Burrow as number 10. Huge improvement. Here's a fun little stat about Joe Burrow that literally nobody else has done. His 2nd season, which was last year, you can kind of call that his 1st season too. He had 8.9 yards per attempt. Okay. Brady has never had that. And Rodgers has only reached that once. Like, we're talking elite level passing in your 2nd season, technically 1st season. So, that warrants, for me, having the weapons he has and coming off of a Super Bowl season, losing in the Super Bowl, but still making it there. That warrants some progress. I think he's only going to get better. The reason he's 10 for me and not 3 is because he doesn't run the ball. He'll run the ball just to get a first down here and there, like the Matthew Stafford style. But there's a lot of players ahead of him that are going to get a lot more fantasy points just from running purposes. But I think it warrants the number 10 spot. Number 9, I got Jalen Hurts. You guys know I love Jalen Hurts. Believed in him since day one. He's got shiny new weapons. They've improved everything on both sides of the game. However, he's this low for me is because they're still a run-first team. A lot of those touchdowns that showed up on my fantasy sheets last year were a lot of goal line situations, running the ball in here and there. I think that was also due to a lot of uncertainty within that team, but I think this is a very polished team that may win the NFC East. So I think he's going to be more of a pure passer, still going to run the ball a lot, going to get his fantasy points, but we have to remember they're going to run the ball a lot. Kyler Murray, I have him at number 8. He would have been probably 3 or 2, maybe 4. But the whole no Hopkins for 6 games is huge for the same reason Shovit said. His fantasy points, having Hopkins versus not having Hopkins is a touchdown or more of a difference. And in those games, Hopkins wasn't there. Kirk stepped up a lot. He had a lot of those deep passes. There's no Kirk either. And everybody knows how much I dislike Hollywood Brown. I have no faith in him at all. But, you know, having a top 10 is still, these are still elite players. These aren't, you know, the 10 isn't any worse than 3. It's just strictly from a numerical fantasy point standpoint. Kyler Murray's going to run all over the place, going to get his points that way, even if he can't make up for the Hopkins touchdowns and the Kirk plays. He's going to have some discomfort to kind of adjust to not having his familiar weapons, but, you know, he can make up for his legs. It's an easy number 8. It's an easy pick. If he falls to you, you're drafting him. You're not going to try to reach somebody else over him. But because there are so many good players ahead of him, he's my number 8, strictly for not having the weapons he's had. Tom Brady is my number 7. I have 3 enough said players here where I don't even have to say any words. You know, we can do all the extrapolating of all the data, but at the end of the day, like they're gonna be in the top 5, top 10. It's just gonna happen. Tom Brady, you know, like I said, there's not much to say. It's an easy decision if he falls to you. I don't care if it's his 20th year. I don't care if it's his 30th year at this point. It's one of those picks that you have to pick when it comes to you because you know it's going to be affordable. And you have to be willing to lose your season on this pick because it's going to be so affordable, right? It's a hit or miss, but there's just so many hits and there's no misses that it's kind of foolish to think that he won't continue to do what he does. We'll see what the weapons are like when it's game time, but this man is it's a football god. He's going to find a way to put up the points, to do what he's always done, barring injuries. And if he doesn't do it this year, then I can rest in peace knowing that I messed up drafting him, but that's a mess up I'm willing to make. Right before him or after him, I have number 6, Aaron Rodgers. This is probably the lowest I've ever rated him since the existence of Aaron Rodgers. He's another enough said player. These are back-to-back enough saids. There, you know, you can change whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can say this, you can say that. He sucks. He doesn't suck. He does this. He's going to show up in the top 10. That's why I have him in the middle of the pack at number 6. That, you know, losing Devonta Adams is huge. I get that, but Aaron Rodgers is right up there with Tom Brady as far as football IQ and figuring things out. He's got some young weapons, but I refuse to believe that he's going to regress. I mean, I'm putting him at 6 because I'm believing he's going to regress, but I'm also not a believer that he's going to regress so much to the point where he's down to a 10 or an 11. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. These are just goats that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and I'm expecting them to score some touchdowns. So I have him at 6, pretty confident 6. After that, I have Russell Wilson at 5. Again, he could have easily made number 1, but the uncertainty of being in a new team, there is a dynamic there that you have to kind of understand. He's going from a number 25 ranked Seattle Seahawks offensive line to a number 19th ranked Broncos line, but everything else around that is better too, besides maybe wide receivers. But he has plenty of those wide receivers to go around. There's some news recently that there's a connection being built between Russell Wilson and KJ Hamler. He's been tweeting about him. They've been hanging out a lot, building that chemistry. So we may be seeing some, you know, new things happening there, and it might not be Tim Patrick or Sutton. So it's just more things for him to play with, and that's dangerous for probably the best quarterback of the last decade. After that, I have Lamar Jackson at 4. It's really hard to doubt him from his legs standpoint. It's just he's going to get you 100 yards. He's going to get you close to 100 yards, and he's going to get a touchdown there, and he's going to have touchdowns to Andrews galore. And I think that this team actually becomes better with no Hollywood Brown. I think they can, you know, try other players. They can try different methods that Hollywood Brown was involved in. A lot of those dropped curl passes, I doubt 99% of NFL players will drop those. You know, the deep bombs, there's always players for deep bombs. Deep bombs are nothing special. Deep bombs come, deep bombs go. There will be certain players to fill that role. Bateman's getting better, and I think Bateman's overall a way better player than Hollywood Brown. So I think, you know, if now that they addressed with their 11 draft picks, they're building an overall better system. None of that cancer from Hollywood Brown, and Lamar Jackson's going to be healthy because he's skipped a lot of last year. I think this is going to be another comeback season for Lamar Jackson. I think we're going to see something special. There's a lot of people that truly hate Lamar Jackson. They're like, he sucks as a quarterback. I think it's time. It's going to be one of those seasons where he's like, okay, well, here I am. Here are the numbers. Here's another playoff berth. You can do with that information what you want, but I think it's a pretty safe pick. I don't think he's that bad of a passer to rank him any lower than 4. Number 3, I have Justin Herbert. I mean, dude, if you're a betting man, like if there's an easy early MVP candidate, you can just kind of chip in. He's one of them. He's getting better. He's got his whole core. He's a stud. There's nothing to doubt about him. And the Chargers are at their peak. This is the peak Chargers offense we're going to see for the next few years and the past few years. This is the best. This is the best since maybe 2010. That's a lot to say because they were number 1 in the league at that time on offense and on defense. And I think this passing team is better. I think they're a better unit. They've learned. They have a really good coach who understands the game. And the method of the game is going to be let Herbert do what he wants. And another good thing is not a lot of other teams and other quarterbacks have the comfort of getting points from their running backs because a lot of teams just hand it off, right? But Herbert, Eckler loves dump off passes, and he's probably the best running back in dump off passes and screen passes and all the passes. He's just a pass god. Having that incorporated into Herbert's already amazing stat line career, just everything that he's done so far just gets better with Eckler in it. And I think he's going to become better. It was really hard to pick between the top 3, but I had to put Herbert at 3. But I'm pretty comfortable with any of these 3 being the best quarterback this year. Number 2, it's a young, enough said player. There's not much to say. Patrick Mahomes is elite, is beyond elite. He's the dude. Again, there's some quarterbacks like, you're wondering, new weapons, how's that going to go? Having this, having that. That's just, I don't give a shit. It's Patrick Mahomes. He knows how to play football. He knows how to run the ball, and he chooses not to, but he can if he wants to. There's not many players that are so elite in one thing, but also can be elite in one thing. They just choose not to. So that dynamic is pretty crazy. And I think having Andy Reid as your head coach gives you the opportunity to always adapt to new things. He's just one of the greatest coaches of all time as far as progressing with the game rather than being old and just sticking to my running game. So I think Patrick Mahomes is going to benefit a lot. I think the change from Tyreek Hill, it might hinder him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hinder him too much because there was a lot of games where, automatic 11 points on the board because Tyreek Hill did something. We don't get that anymore, but we get a lot of consistency with Juju and the younger receivers. And the deep bombs are going to be there. They're just always going to be there. So I think it's a pretty safe number 2. You could argue the last player I mentioned and Patrick Mahomes as number 1, but I think it's one of those players that you feel comfortable drafting. And if he sucks, you're like, you know what? God wasn't on my side and I'm okay with it. So that being said, we're down to number 1 and it's consensus, Josh Allen. If we're talking pure quarterback play, he's like number 6 or number 7 for me, maybe number 8, maybe number 9. But we're talking fantasy. And I think when it comes to fantasy,
number 9, I'd interject there. Number 9. Yeah, let's get back to that. I'd like you to rank me 8 people.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying maybe. There's a big maybe in front of that. I was just saying that there's a lot more room to lower him in my rankings or my top 10 than a solid number 1 because he's definitely not a number 1 in my pure quarterback ranking. So from a fantasy football perspective, there's an argument here that Josh Allen should be ranked number 3 or number 2, and that is because as of, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but over the last 2 days, I believe, the head coach has openly said he wants him to run less because he's that valuable for the team. So I'm assuming there's going to be 10 rushes lower than last year, maybe 15, maybe 20. I don't know. Maybe it's not going to lower at all, but it's something to use, right? This is why we're good fantasy players. We look at things like this that could happen, could not happen, and utilize it in our favor. So if Justin Herbert and Josh Allen are there, and there's more evidence that he's not going to be running that much this upcoming year, I'm picking Justin Herbert. I don't give a shit. Josh Allen's a great player. He runs well. He runs over people. He runs through people. He throws bombs. He's got a good team around him. Now he has Dalvin Cook's little brother with him. And all of those reasons are why he's a unanimous number 1 for me, barring the arguments from the other players. But Josh Allen, he does everything. What more do you want from a fantasy player from your quarterback standpoint, where he can throw the ball deep, he can throw the ball short, he can run, he can pass. He's a complete fantasy quarterback. And I think for that reason, you're going to get more points out of him than anybody else, unless this rushing thing is an actual thing.
Solid. So Josh Allen was a unanimous for us. Other than that, there was a decent amount of difference. I think Patrick Mahomes, similar. I had him 3, you had him 2. I think Shelby, you had him 3 or 2 or something like that. But I had Tom Brady's number 10. I guess we can just We can touch on these guys a little bit if we want. We cannot touch
Yeah,
on them.
start with your list from 10 down, and then we'll just if there's anything to talk about, we can talk about them. Because I think the only player I didn't have Dak Prescott on my list. I don't know what else changed for you guys. Who did I add here that wasn't on?
Yeah. I didn't have Burrow on my list. Show me you had him 3. Should show you had him 10. I had Burrow right at 11. I had Stafford at 12. He fell right outside my top 10. Deshaun Watson, another interesting one. I know he's going to play limited games, but in the limited games he gets to play, he's going to be fucking fantasy relevant. So that's definitely a dark horse for somebody that's going to draft one of these quarterbacks and then stash Watson on their bench to when he's eligible, trade bait, whatever. So those are guys. I think Stafford can still come in and be a really solid fantasy quarterback week to week. And so knowing if you're playing in like 10 or 12 man leagues, you're going to get a pretty solid fantasy quarterback, right?
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing with fantasy. These rankings from last year. So I pulled up 2021's ESPN rankings on half point PPR. Kyler Murray was number 10, Jalen Hurts 9, Burrow 8, Dak 7, Stafford 6, Rodgers 5, Mahomes 4, Brady 3, Herbert 2, Josh Allen 1, right? So this is how they ranked last year. But my concern and the reason why I think this is going to be slightly different this year is a lot of these were based on limited games. And I think for me, I always look at a quarterback when I'm drafting him. What are the total possible range of outcomes, right? Because yeah, it's great to get a quarterback that can drop you 40 points on any given week. But if that same quarterback's range of outcomes is they can also drop like 5 or 6, then I'm gonna shy away from 5 or 6 because again, fantasy is a mathematical equation in your head of how you're going to get this many points, whatever your amount of points target that you're saying you're going to get is based on the lineup you construct, right? So you're looking at guys who, let me just give you some examples. You have a guy like Matthew Stafford. We didn't talk about him, but Aaron Rodgers. Let me give you an example of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers last year in 17 games had less than 20 points, 7 out of the 17 games, right? And I know when we talk about it, our benchmark for quarterbacks is like, yeah, if they can get us 20 points, like that's a fantastic quarterback. So any quarterback that's range of outcomes is they're consistently getting less than 20 points versus if they're getting like 21 or 22. So I differentiated it with how many times are they getting under 20 points and how many times are they getting over 30 points, right? So everything in between is whatever. We'll take it. That's cush. But Aaron Rodgers last year, over 30 just one time, under 27 times, right? So his range of outcomes were his upside was, over 31 game out of the entire year. I don't think that's tremendous upside, and under 27 times. So that's 8 games basically out of the 17 that he had one really good game and then 7 games where you're like, well, in your head, you have Aaron Rodgers as a top 5 quarterback hypothetically, but he's getting you under 27 times. To me, that's a concern, right? So long story short, I was basically just pulled up all these rankings and looked at range of outcomes and what the worst week somebody had last year was versus what the best week somebody had was. And to me, Aaron Rodgers had the biggest range of outcomes. He had a week where he had 1.32 fantasy points. And he also had a week where he had 33.5 fantasy points, right? And he lost Devontae Adams. And he's not participating in OTAs. He's too good for that. He doesn't fucking need to show up to OTAs. So he's going to have to build chemistry with a bunch of new receivers. Sure, he's got Allen Lazard there. So whatever chemistry he had with Lazard, that's totally fine. But there's a reason Aaron Rodgers is as good as he is. A lot of what his greatness is timing with his receivers, right? The back shoulder throw is 100% timing. It's all about timing. I don't care what receiver you're there. If you're not turning back at the right time, you're not going to make that catch. So for me, that's why I had Aaron Rodgers a little bit lower. And that's why I have Tom Brady a little bit lower, is because not necessarily because they're bad players. They're going to be arguably some of the best quarterbacks of all time, if not the 2 best. But the range of outcomes for the guys ahead of them, and in my eyes, they're a little bit higher and they're a little bit more consistent simply because the rushing game can get them the 6 points already as like a baseline versus guys like these, especially Tom Brady, who's not going to run much at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Brady gets more fantasy points. I know that I had Tom Brady last year, and he definitely was more consistent getting that 20 points than Aaron Rodgers was. And I think that 1.32 game, that points, was probably, I think I played against Ayush, and he started Aaron Rodgers, and I definitely benefited from that. But dude, I don't know, man. I just think that Aaron Rodgers, he's number 10 for me. But anytime someone gets paid, like I'm a little bit hesitant that they are, they want to try to do better. Like he got paid $500 million, right? So it's like
$500 million. What are you talking about here?
His salary, whatever his salary was. But I forget what his contract is, but it's a ridiculous amount, right? But like, it's like, there's no motivation. You've already gotten paid. You get guaranteed money now. And like winning a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, with the receiving core that you have, I don't think that like he is committed as much as like Tom
Oh,
Brady.
I think you said getting paid makes you play better earlier. Did you not say that?
No, so the
Oh.
other way around.
Okay, that's why I was like squinting.
Yeah. When you're in your contract year, you know, you're like playing for the contract, but you've already received it. And so there's less motivation there for you. So, you know, I just think that that's going to definitely be a factor on whether or not he definitely meets his potential, I guess, than the last year's.
Yeah, I think again, it's not a knock on. I don't think like he could still play to the same level that he plays consistently throughout his career. I just think there's a lot more upside with some of these other players. But nonetheless, so Tom Brady was at number 10. Shobit, you had him at what, number 9? And Shisho, you had him where? 7? Okay, so lower half of the top 10 is basically where all of us have him, right? Just because again, he doesn't run. It's another year that he's getting older. Again, at some point, he's going to have to stop being great. I would just imagine, right? He's not going to play till he's 70. So every year, it's a slight, okay, another year older, another year your body's going through that. Another year of like, yeah, Mike Evans is still there, but the Chris Godwin uncertainty, you're going to have to build a connection with Russell Gage. We don't know if Gronk's coming back. So even if he wasn't as big a factor last year as he was like the previous years, that chemistry and the fact that when Gronk's on the floor or on the field, people know that there's chemistry automatically changes the schematics of the defense, right? So if he doesn't end up joining the team, I just think there's a lot of things there that don't work in his favor. But I don't know. So either way, we all have him in a similar trajectory. I had Aaron Rodgers number 9. Shobit, you had him 10?
I did, yeah.
And Shisho, you had him where?
6.
Okay, still a lower half of the 6 through 10, right? So in the 6 through 10 range, whether again those differences in those points are going to be like an average of like 19.4 versus like 19.7, right? So it's going to be very, very small.
So yeah, for me, it's like, do I trust Aaron Rodgers or do I trust Kyler Murray more? And the Hopkins thing, it's like it was easy for me to make that decision. And Joe Burrow, I'm like, you know, I love you, dude, but it's like it's still Aaron Rodgers, and you know. Again, it's the bottom half. We're all in the same idea here. I just have him a little higher because just barring last year's difference, all the other years he's been a stud. So I'm just relying on him to continue what he's doing.
Yeah, and the other thing about Kyler Murray I want to add is because I have Kyler Murray number 2. Shobit, where did you have him?
Kyler Murray is number 6 for me.
And Shisho, you have him where?
8.
Number 8, right? So last year, Kyler Murray was the 10th quarterback in fantasy, but his average points per game, because he didn't play the same amount of games as everybody, was 21 and a half. So 21 and a half actually would have put him number 4 based on average points per game, based on the amount of games he played, right? And that's with Hopkins missing time. So we know Hopkins is still going to miss the time this year. I agree Christian Kirk's no longer there, and that was a guy that they relied on. I expect a little bit of uptick from Rondale Moore. I think it's going to be a second year. I think they're going to learn to utilize him a little bit better. And again, this consistent second half of the season meltdown predicated on Cliff Kingsbury and last year, Kyler actually being hurt and like not running as much as we would have normally seen from him. I'm expecting no injuries, right? So we're basing these projections off the fact that we're not expecting these players to get hurt. I just think there's more upside because Kyler, like you said, Shobit, huge point. He's looking for that next big contract. He wants $50 million. He hasn't already got paid yet. In fact, his ranking and his projection and what everybody's seeing of him is actually going down. So his stock is going down. So I think all of that is going to be added motivation for him to actually play the way he can play, which is when he's running around and he's at his best, like there are very few quarterbacks that can do some of the things Kyler Murray can do. So I agree with you that the Hopkins not being there is going to be pertinent. But again, if we're just looking at Hopkins not there last year as well, and Kyler being hurt and the average amount of points that Kyler was giving you on a week-to-week basis, he ranks more in the top 3 or 4. So that's why, to me, I still have Kyler as having still not tapped his full potential because he's still not there yet to me.
Yeah, most people have, Kyler Murray at top 5 easily. And he could finish top 5. I think Sleeper has them at
it wouldn't surprise anybody if he finished 1. No. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's the thing about the top 10. It's like we're talking about the elites in the game. It's like there's very little differences between these guys, especially in this day and age where 2 years ago, there would be like a top, like 7 good quarterbacks. And even in the top 10, 8 to 10 will be shit. So it's like in your fantasy draft, you have troubles. Now I'm not touching a quarterback until like the 11th or maybe like much later. I don't know. Cause Joe Burrow is going to be sitting there. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's very little differences between these guys. So it doesn't surprise me if Joe Burrow is number 1 by the end of the season.
That you hit exactly what I was about. The next point I was about to make. Since the differences between these top 10s on a week-to-week basis, right? Like I know Josh Allen ended up with 100 more points than Kyler Murray did last year fantasy-wise, but again, week-to-week basis is what matters in fantasy, not your total amount of points. On a week-to-week basis, if the differences between the first quarterback and the 10th quarterback is only like, let's say 3.5 to 4 points, what becomes valuable when ranking quarterbacks is average draft position, right? Because there are guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes who are absolutely going to probably go top 1 or 2. And sometimes there are people that have it in their brain that like they don't want to have to worry about the quarterback position. They want a solid foundation.
Second round.
So Josh Allen gets reached on, right? Patrick Mahomes gets reached on. When in reality, Patrick Mahomes' average draft last year, he was a second quarterback taken, 31st overall. So what is that? Third round, if you will. Josh Allen was 22nd overall. So he was taken in the second round. Well, Patrick Mahomes ended up being the 4th best quarterback, and Justin Herbert and Tom Brady, whose average draft position was 38-72, actually outscored him, right? So then the people last year that drafted Patrick Mahomes probably did not finish where they ideally would have liked to have because he was reached on. He did not live up to his potential of where he was drafted. And so like this year, let's put aside the rankings. So we've all gone over this. Who do you guys personally see as a quarterback that may fall in the draft relative to everybody else, but has the upside to hit the top 3 to where there's going to be tremendous value for where you're actually drafting?
Justin Herbert. That one's the easy one for me. It's Justin Herbert. He's going to fall below Allen. He's going to fall below Mahomes. He might even fall below Lamar Jackson. He may not fall below the rest of the guy. Maybe Kyler Murray is going to go before him. But for me, I have so much faith in Herbert this year that it's like, it's going to be a party if I can get a hold of this guy later in the draft.
I was partying last year with him.
Yeah. For me, it's 2 guys. There's obviously you already mentioned Matthew Stafford, right? This guy gets Allen Robinson, and still outside of OBJ, Cooper Kupp is still there. So I can expect them to be consistent in that offense, and so I don't see like getting Matthew Stafford if you can get him in the 13th round. I think that would be a steal. What do most quarterbacks go like 9th outside of like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes? So get him in the 13th round. I think I'd like that. I also kind of would be intrigued to just draft Derek Carr this year because of the fact that Devontae Adams is now on the team.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
They still have Hunter Renfrow. I think Jay Jones is gone. But they've got Brian Edwards, I believe.
Got traded.
Oh, he got traded. But Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller, those 3 guys, I think is definitely like something that you should look at. And maybe if you can get Derek Carr, like, I don't know, 17th pick, maybe, you might want to stash him.
Yeah. I think having Devontae Adams is definitely going to propel Derek Carr. But again, we've already talked about like 13 or 14 guys that I honestly think will probably outscore Derek Carr in fantasy. So when you're playing in like a 10-man league, let's say, like he'll be a nice maybe second quarterback to take when you're, like you said, 13th, 14th round and you just need like a bye week replacement. But I'd be hard pressed unless we see like 5 of these quarterbacks that we've talked about get hurt, that Derek Carr propels himself inside like the top 10 fantasy wise, just because again, he's not offering tremendous amount of rushing. And it's not, we're not talking about overall quarterback play. We're talking about fantasy points specifically, right? So yes, Devontae Adams should help him for sure. But I still think the limitations with him not using his legs enough compared to like 7 of these guys in the top 10 that love to run the ball, like that's always going to be the deciding factor. And then like 3 touchdown passes versus 4, 280 yards versus 300 yards. I mean, those are really, really arbitrary when you can get 60 yards rushing and automatically get equivalent to a touchdown run. So that's why, again, I think, late down the stretch, you need a plug and play guy. Yeah. Derek Carr is going to be a really solid option. A lot of these guys, Stafford will be a solid option.
I have a honorable mention list with 5 players.
Go for it. And
I made this list just to let the people that are listening know that it's not the end of the world if you can't get a hold of these top 10 players. So Deshaun Watson could easily be number 1 if he plays, easily. Yep. That he could easily do that. And then there's Stafford. I mean, Stafford finished very close in the top 10
He was
last year.
sixth. He was sixth.
He was sixth. And if we're going to mention Stafford, similar gameplay with Kirk Cousins. I think he finished 11th last year. 11th is not that far from number 10. And then there's Derek Carr. That's the other guy I mentioned because of the same reasons we talked about. And then the last person, maybe a big surprise, is Zach Wilson. I think just because of the skill set that he has, the arm strength he has, and the immense amount of changes that have happened in the world of the Jets, they're still going to be behind. They're still going to have to throw. So I think that works perfectly in Zach Wilson's favor. And he might make his first break through the top 15 this year.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Stafford was sixth overall last year. His average draft position, 98th. So he definitely, of everybody in the top 10, was the best value draft quarterback of entire fantasy football last year. So again, I think most leagues, let's say 10 league, 12-man league. I know some even stretch out as far as 14-man. If you're playing in leagues that are bigger than 14-man, I honestly that seems kind of shitty. That doesn't seem fun to wake up and you're like number one receiver is Darnell Mooney. I don't know why the fuck anybody would do that, but teach their own, I guess. If you're playing in 10 or 12 or even 14-man leagues, we've already named 14 or more quarterbacks that are more than sufficient as starting quarterbacks for fantasy football. Obviously, when you get to number 14 versus number 1, there's going to be a little bit of a difference. You're going to get 5 to 6 points on an average week-to-week basis difference. But that's the trade-off depending on the way you draft. But like you said, this seems like a year where it doesn't feel necessary to reach on a quarterback early. I think a lot of people can kind of stand idle, wait for, the people. There's always going to be people that take the Allens and Mahomes, right? And if you're at that spot and, you have running backs on the board, receivers on the board, and for whatever reason you think you need to take that quarterback, I'm going to fundamentally say you don't need to take that quarterback. You absolutely should not take that quarterback. If you want him, because again, I know some people just love having the safety net of a quarterback that they're never going to have to sub out unless it's a bye week. And I can respect that. But we just talked about a guy who could be number 1 in fantasy in average points per game based on, the amount of games he plays. And you could pick up Matthew Stafford in the 15th round, start him for the first 6 weeks, and then you have Deshaun Watson in your back pocket. So it's just not necessary value-wise. You don't want to beat Bill Belichick and, get Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton the way that, they drafted them. You don't want to be reaching for players like that. I just don't think it's necessary. And all the quarterbacks we talked about are more than serviceable. So,
The only thing with that is only if you're not in one of those crazy leagues where quarterbacks get favored so many points, 6 points per touchdown, and then bonus points for 200 yards and 300 yards. If you're not in those kind of leagues, a standard PPR, standard 10-man, 12-man league, I think then you should not reach for a quarterback.
If you're playing in those leagues, it's time to grow up and play in a grown man's league.
Yeah. Get potty trained. Take your diapers off, man. It's great to see 386 versus 425, but at what point is that ridiculous? So, that
dopamine hit must be crazy.
Yeah, I don't know.
You'll look at scores where it's a team, you scored 200 points in 1 week and it's 200 to 190. How does that even happen?
The worst part about that is most people play fantasy the normal way, right? So you go to work and you're like, dude, let's check week to week. How'd you do? Oh, I got 650 points. Patrick Mahomes got me 117. I'm what the fuck are you talking about? That. You can't even have a normal conversation.
No.
It's how the hell did you even get that point? So I don't even like talking to people when I see their score and they're look at this, I won. I'm sick, dude. You had 2-point PPR league. So Chase Edmonds on 14 catches got you 25 points. I honestly don't understand the hype and fun in playing that way. But again, teach their own. But for half point standard and full point PPR, I think this quarterback ranking is just going to be the same group of players, but in a different order, maybe. What else you guys got? I don't know.
Maybe you want to throw in Justin Fields and Trey Lance, maybe.
Dude, you can be that guy. Please be that guy. Everybody listening, if you're in the league with me, please be those guys. You have to, okay? You heard it here. Be those guys so I can win again.
Yeah, you're right. They're worth mentioning for the sole reason of their legs, right? We know that they don't have a team enough around them that they're going to pole vault into the top 5, especially Justin Fields. Let's be real. It's almost like his team doesn't give a shit about him. So for the sake of his legs, absolutely. Lance, I could buy slightly more into because we still don't even know if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a 49er by the start of the season. And again, he's got an entire off season. He's had like 2 full seasons backing them up now to progress. So you naturally like to believe that he's somewhat coherent as the 3rd overall draft pick. But yeah, Zach Wilson, I like his weapons more than Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields would be an absolute flyer. But for me, I think a lot of people and rankings that I've seen are sleeping on Russell Wilson, thinking he's past his prime, thinking that he didn't run as much last year. And so maybe his legs aren't where they used to be. And to all those people, I say, you guys are fucking stupid. So like, if everybody in our league decides to pass up on Russell Wilson, he's going to be the ideal person that falls into my lap. And I just like,
we got 2 Broncos fans. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. It's probably not going to happen. And okay, so I know you had. So it's funny because you are hardcore on Justin Herbert this year, Shisho, and I'm actually hardcore on the Jalen Hurts train. And last year we both had this opposite quarterbacks. And I think the reason I'm less on Herbert is because last year I drafted Herbert as like maybe the 9th quarterback in our league. I think I was like one of the last people to draft a quarterback, and he ended up being the number 2 quarterback. So it was like insane his how well he actually played out. And similar for you with Jalen Hurts, right? But I think the one thing we were talking about all year, and even like week 6 on or week 8 on or something, that team completely shifted to a pure running team, right? Like we saw that monumental shift that they were just going to be a run first team. Even despite that, Jalen Hurts ended up as the 9th best quarterback in fantasy football. And he still was averaging, because he played less games, his average points per game was 20.8. So he's consistently getting you over 20 points.
Yeah.
And now let's think about, like, we talk about the whole Kyler Murray is going to have targets go to Hollywood Brown, and we don't like Hollywood Brown because he drops passes. Jalen Hurts is going to have targets that go to A.J. Brown, right? Those balls that went to Jalen Reagor that you're like, what the fuck? How did you not catch that? A.J. Brown is getting those balls.
Okay. One thing about A.J. Brown, I'm a big A.J. Brown fan, but he also tends to drop passes sometimes. He's not as reliable as these other bigger guys. But it's AJ fucking Brown. Like, he touches the ball, it could be a touchdown. This is a whole different argument than Reagor and those little guys.
It's something Hurts has never seen or never got to play with, man. So that's why I'm just like, dude, this is the year for him to take that next step and like be like, I'm actually a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. That's why it's so hard to pick between the top 9. The thing with Herbert for me is that I got to basically put him on my bench on your team last year and watch him. And I got to pick out what I like about him, what I don't like about him. And there's a lot of things not to like. He like ran around like a chicken with his head cut off, but it wasn't like Mahomes. It was more like a panic method. I didn't like that, but towards the end of the season, he changed all that. And then the number 1 reason I'm so high on Herbert is because I know I'm going to get consistent numbers. I know I'm not going to get 9 points. I know I'm not going to get 12 points. I know I'm going to get 18 or more. And some of those mores are going to be 40 points. Some of those mores may be 45 points. And Jalen Hurts may not do that. He might be more of that 20, 20, 20, 20. And that's just what I saw. And I like that because I'm a big consistent guy. My team's name was Consistent Force for like 5 years in a row. But there's something about these players that could give you 45. That's why I go for the Tyreek Hills. And I see that in Herbert. I think he's that guy now. I think he's able to do that.
You want to hear something funny? So I remember last year there was a point where, Herbert was doing like the 40 and then the 13 and then like the 40 or 38 and then like the 12. And I was like, man, am I going to have to like pick and choose when I start him? So of the top 10 players per ESPN's fantasy football last year that I gave you guys, like the range of outcomes, Tom Brady had a game where he had 4.76. Aaron Rodgers had a game where he had 1.32. Josh Allen had a game where he had 9.56. Patrick Mahomes had a game where he had 7.5 points. Dak had a game where he had 2.64. Joe Burrow 7.38. Even Jalen Hurts 6.86. Even Kyler Murray 9.06. But Justin Herbert's worst fantasy output last year was 11 points. So like double digits, bro. There's a psychological feeling when you look at your score and the guy has double digits or single digits, man. There's an absolute psychological truth to that. And like you said, Shisho, his range of outcomes, his top peak performance, 42.82, which based on what I'm looking at right now was the highest individual performance by a quarterback last year, if I'm not wrong, of the top 10, unless someone else randomly did that. So so the range of outcomes for him, the consistency level, and you have to assume another year in the NFL, another year of like entire OTAs, off season, all that stuff. Like, why would he not take the next step? So I totally get it.
Like, if there's a graph and you have consistency on one side and like fantasy points on one side, like Justin Herbert's up here. You know what I mean? Like he's the guy that gives you the most amount of points and the least amount of shitty days. So it's like, it's got to get better. It's got to get better.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So it'll be interesting. Like you said, the range of outcomes between the number 1 and number 10 is not going to be like monumentally monstrous. It's just going to be about average draft position and where you make these choices for these players, right? And again, I think we can all agree. I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that quarterback is a position, especially this year, in my opinion, this year specifically, but most years, that you just don't need to reach on. And this year, just hearing the names of the guys that we have as like number 9 and number 10 on our list, I'm like, why the would I reach for a quarterback? I mean, there's so much more value now in stocking up your running backs, your receivers, versus having these quarterbacks. Because again, the guys like Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford might not even get drafted. They might just be chilling in free agency. So again, there's a ton of value in not reaching for quarterbacks. I think if I can give the viewers one single piece of advice after this quarterback ranking, do not reach for a quarterback. I know Josh Allen's going to sit there at one of those spots when you're like, oh my God, it's Josh Allen, I have to take him. But you really, really don't. And I think
that is going to be the difference. That is going to be the difference between, like, if you have 3 good fantasy players and you have 10-man league, the difference between winning and losing between those 3 players are who's going to reach on these players. It's that simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Josh Allen could absolutely just consistently get you 25 points per week. And you're going to be like, fuck yeah. But where you're not going to realize the shortcomings are like all your other positions are going to be slightly worse because at that draft spot, you took Josh Allen. So I think quarterback is not necessary specifically this year to reach, man. We could fucking have like Lamar Jackson as in like our top like 8 through 10, both of us, me and Chovit. So like, that's a guy that could be the number 1. He's number 4 for you. He could be the number 1 fantasy player. Kyler Murray could be the number 1 fantasy player. Justin Herbert could be the number 1 fantasy player. Jalen Hurts, to me, could be the number 1 fantasy player. Like, there's so many guys that have an insane range of outcomes. Please don't reach for a quarterback.
Everybody here besides Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers could easily be number 1. Aaron Rodgers was MVP last year, and we're still here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's that close of a race here.
Yeah. Tom Brady finished 3rd last year. Rodgers finished 5th last year in fantasy points. So it's absolutely nuts. And I'm go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all about the opportunity cost, right? When you draft a player in that 3rd round, like if you drafted, Josh Allen, you lose on a top receiver or a top running back that you can get that is a lot more important than, some of the streaming options. You could stream quarterback and be fine with it. Streaming receiver and running back on a weekly basis is not something that's easy done.
Oh, they ain't ready for that streaming quarterback life. They're not. That's for the season. We'll save
baby steps. Baby steps. Our listeners need to take baby steps. First, don't reach on a quarterback, and then we'll get you into streaming quarterbacks. That's real skill right there, man. I couldn't do it. I haven't done it yet, so we'll see. But anything else? I can't think of anything else that maybe I haven't touched on. Did you guys look at opposing quarterback strength of schedules by chance?
Yeah. So
I did.
Yeah, I did.
That was another reason I really like Jalen Hurts. 3rd easiest schedule for opposing quarterbacks.
Washington, Carson Wentz with number 1.
Yeah.
You can make what you want of that, but no.
I mean, I would wait on the strength of schedule stuff a little bit later, just because teams are still figuring out their whole squad, and there's going to be injuries and stuff. So, but yeah, before the draft, you got to look at the strength of schedule. Maybe right now, before we even know the 53-man roster, may not be as important.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's all I got. You guys got anything?
Nope. Ready for our wide receivers next week? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. Right. Top 10 wide receiver rankings. I love it. Again, fantasy football. It's officially begun. And we started it. No one else started it. Fantasy football season. It's officially back. And it's only May, but it's never too early to get ready to win your leagues. It's never too early to start preparing so that you no longer have to be the Sacco Bowl or the Toilet Bowl or have to do all these crazy.
It's never too early for mock drafts either. If you want to go on ESPN and do some mock drafts, now is the time.
Have they even opened that up yet? Have they opened up the mock drafts? They usually happens a little bit later, but I'm not sure. I haven't done a mock draft in May probably ever in my life, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. But nonetheless,
if not ESPN, there'll be something, drafters or whatever to do it. So sure. Yeah, get on the mock draft game.
Yeah, we should just to keep things fresh. I should do our draft position videos pretty soon. It'll just get our juices flowing, Then if we do,
I've been waiting a decade for that to happen this early, so I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, I might do it. I might do it pretty soon, like maybe today.
Do
or
it right
tomorrow or
now.
This
I'm just
weekend.
kidding.
I just like do it on stream. I'm like, here we go. All right, fantastic. That's all we have for you guys. Again, those are our top 10 quarterback rankings for the 2022 NFL fantasy football season. We'll be back next week to go over our top 10 receivers. Again, we're the only playbook. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace out.